Hello and welcome to Echomap, the GP's practical, easy, and above all useful ultrasound tool. So as usual, if you like this channel, subscribe to the channel, put me a like, it's really very encouraging. And really, I can't thank you enough for all the great comments you post, it really makes my day. Plus, it always motivates me to keep making new videos for you at the end of my consultation. A real, authentic general practice consultation where I share real clinical cases seen in consultation to help you too progress in this subtle but exciting art of ultrasound. On Facebook, it's the same. Put me a like, subscribe to Facebook. It keeps you up to date with the release of new videos quickly. And then, as I make this video, the introduction to ultrasound training is still being offered. The link is in the description, so you can still take part. And I really encourage you to do so because I've put a lot of time and energy into this training to help you get started. Even if you've never touched an ultrasound probe, you're not too daring and it tempts you, well, this is the absolutely ideal slot. So today, exceptionally no clinical cases, but an announcement, an important announcement, even two announcements. Be sure to stick around until the end of this video, because at the end, I'll give you a little something that will please you and really help you. And I'm sure really it's something that has the potential to be a game changer for you. So what's the announcement? Well, it's the release, obviously, of a new training course, Essential Diagnostics in Arterial Echo Doppler, which is therefore level 2 training, so advanced level on Doppler. A great comprehensive course with, once again, lots of clinical cases, lots of practical demonstrations. And the theme of this video, well, it's to present you with a free excerpt from this training course where we're going to talk about exploring the abdominal aorta. So it's time for me to let you view the extract. You'll see, I put together a montage of different parts of the training that deal specifically with the aorta. I hope you'll find it interesting and informative. And then, it's also a way for me to share with you a little of the quality of the training I put in place to help you as much as possible to develop this exciting tool. The first wall change we'll observe is the aneurysm. Aneurysms, you're going to be confronted with them very often. It's by no means something rare. Our patients are getting older and older. Our patients have cardiovascular pathologies. Our patients smoke. And so aneurysms, particularly in the aorta, you're bound to spot them in your career. You're going to spot a lot of them and tell yourself that the diagnosed ones are going to do your patients a huge service. What is an aneurysm? It's a modification of the wall. It's a loss of parallelism of the artery walls. And as much as at the level of the aorta, there are very strict criteria that have been described. As much as in the periphery, it's a tiny bit more floating. This is based on a diameter that becomes 1.5 times greater than the expected normal diameter. When talking about aneurysms, I'm thinking here particularly of popliteal arteries. So when it comes to the aorta, as we've said, there's going to be a lot of it. Aneurysms come in all shapes, sizes, and locations. Another type of aneurysm, more on that later. Here, it was the aortic aneurysm of one of my patients, still measured at 46 mm, so quite large with the presence of a thrombus within the aneurysm. You can see the wall here that's going to spread. Same thing here on this side, so we do have an increase in the caliber, the diameter of the artery. Here's another example of an aneurysm, another form of aneurysm, also thrombosed here. You can see that we have this wall that will bulge, deform a little like a bicycle inner tube hernia, while on the other side it remains overall rather linear, so a different shape. But the common denominator is obviously an increase in the transverse diameter, the antero-posterior diameter of this aorta. So the aneurysm is measured, I just told you, from front to back. What's in it for me? Well, because we can have measurement errors linked to the propagation of the ultrasound beam if we measure from right to left, so we'll always measure from front to back. The most visible walls you see in this image are necessarily the anterior and posterior walls. You can see here that it's pretty hard to imagine the side wall. Same on this side, it's hard to tell where it actually ends. While you can see the anterior and posterior walls very well, it's normal, it's a question of perpendicularity, it's a question of ultrasound technique. That's why we'll always measure an aneurysm from front to back and always include wall thickness. When measuring abdominal aortic aneurysms, it's very important. Because if you're only measuring the lumen while that aneurysm is thrombosed, you're in for a ride. Here the light is going to do maybe, we'll say, go 3 cm, when in reality the aneurysm here is monumental, measuring 70 mm. This was a patient of mine who presented with abdominal pain. Here we have, in fact, it's not a bleed. In fact, in reality, it's the inferior vena cava. So you see the size of the aneurysm, you can come across some really big stuff. So it's very codified. I was telling you, there are very precise criteria. How we locate the aorta and how we can safely measure the aorta to diagnose, therefore, our abdominal aortic aneurysms. So, what you need to know about the aorta already, you're going to be surprised if you haven't scanned the aorta, is that the aorta is short. It's very short. In fact, in reality, the iliac bifurcation is located very high up. See, if we look here, we have the patient's pubis. Here we have the diaphragm. In fact, we're only halfway up the patient's torso. So, in fact, we're going to have to go looking for it pretty high up at the level, really, of the epigastric hollow, and that's going to be our starting point. If you look for it too low, you'll have too much digestive gas, and you'll actually have already passed the bifurcation and never find your aorta. The second thing you need to know is that the aorta is on your patient's left. You'll remember that the aorta is on the side of the heart, so on the patient's left. This will be a great way to retain it. Perhaps this will be a good mnemonic, because sometimes you'll hesitate. With AvenCav, you'll be thinking, which one do I have to measure? And if you get it wrong and measure the AvenCav instead of the aorta, it's still a bit of a hassle. The vena, you'll see it doesn't have the same shape, it doesn't have the same pulsatility. It's a little flatter. I'll show you directly on the image. And then the aorta tends to be a tiny bit forward of the vena too. But I find it best to think of it as the big vessel, the big black circle to the left of our patient. So we're going to get quite high up in the epigastric hollow. And I encourage you from the outset to put a lot of depth into it. Why put in a lot of depth? Because I'm going to ask you to start by spotting a big cone of shadow here, which is actually the vertebra, and this will be a good place to start. In fact, the aorta is in front of that big cone of shadow, a little to the left, and it's beating. So you see that already the aorta, anyway, we spot it. Strangely enough, you can't spot it all that well. So why can't we spot it all that well? Well, quite simply because my probe isn't perpendicular. If I straighten my probe, you can see how much the image improves. And I haven't adjusted the image yet, okay? So, depth to spot the shadow cone, and then perpendicularity to get the sharpest image possible. Well, the big beating vessel on the left is the aorta, and the one on the right is the vena. You can see that it's not all that complicated after all if you start at the epigastric level. And then, the great thing is at the epigastric level, that's why I'll ask you to start there. And don't start by putting your probe directly on the patient's belly, because at the epigastric level, you have the hepatic window and it always goes through fine. Your ultrasound is always going to come through well at this level, so you won't have any trouble at this level spotting large vessels a little bit. The aorta you see there are lots of vessels. You might think, is this it? Is it here? Is it here? We could be lost. The aorta is practically glued to the vertebra. In terms of the anatomical board, you can see that it's backwards. It's really behind everything, right in contact with our vertebrae. So finally, this is the deepest thing in large vessels. Here, what's deepest in contact with the condom? In contact with the large vessels. Now we're going to improve our image. You can't work on an image like that. It's not possible. We're going to change it up a bit, lower the gain a little. I'll even turn down the power of the echoes altogether. Let's get our focus right. As you can see, there's always a little fine-tuning at the start to get right. And then once you've done it, afterwards you're all set for exploration. Put some contrast on. Your images, because that's what it's all about. To measure a diameter of a pipe, so actually that's not really going to be a problem. Even if you have a tiny bit too much contrast on your image, in the end your measurement will be more accurate. There you go. We're not bad at chatting. I think you can see the aorta quite well. So, the aorta, unlike the vena cava, is quite round and pulsating, whereas the vena cava you see on the other side is a little flatter and doesn't have quite the same pulsatility. So maybe a little peek is in order if you see that it's said to flutter in a gull's wing. It's not quite the same, whereas here we have a well-rounded, well-toned vessel that pulses in a very regular way. With a little help, you'll learn to spot without too much difficulty. And then if not, you'll remember that it's on the left, so that won't pose any difficulties. So next up, quite simply, it's not complicated for aortic aneurysm. It takes a few minutes. We're going to follow our aorta and check that its caliber is still regular. If you're losing out on digestive gas, you can think of several things. Adjusting your image and focus. Think about its perpendicularity and sometimes press a little bit because you're going to chase digestive gas. We don't press too hard. It doesn't hurt the patients. And then you see that we bring it up a little bit in the image. It improves our image and we chase away digestive gas. So that's pretty good. We've seen digestive gas passing there on the side, but here it's not bothering us since we're pressing on the probe. I really do give all my practical tips. You can see that there, you lose it. You can try to change the angle, for example, pass a little to the side. We may have digestive gas bothering us. You can see that we managed to keep up with her for quite some time. Now we're talking digestive. We're trying to get to the other side. There are bound to be times when you'll lose it before the fork in the road, generally speaking. You can see that here it's starting to fork. Here we've got one vessel and we're coming up on two vessels. This is the fork in the road, just go right here. It's often difficult to start studying the iliacs from this level. Because you're actually deep, you've got the digestive in front, it's going to get complicated, but you don't need that to measure the abdominal aorta. That's it, we just need to follow her. Check that her caliber is constant. If you're in doubt, don't forget that you can help yourself with the sagittal. Sagittal works very, very well for the aorta. You can see that here, we even managed to put on the image that the caliber of our aorta is perfectly regular. I hope you've enjoyed it, that it's fascinated you, that you've learned something about the aorta, that you're keen to learn more, and that you're going to take part in the Echomap adventure with me. As usual, put me a like, subscribe, If you're still hesitating, at least take part in the introductory course. It's completely free, it's completely offered, and I really hope to find you by my side in this big, big training pack never before seen on the Echomap channel for a limited time, of course. See you soon on Echomap, bye bye.